Hi everyone, welcome to this new tutorial in the iPad Art Break series. This one is all about drawing better flourishes. I know that a lot of people struggle with drawing flourishes for their patterns and lettering and illustrations that are fluid and have this beautiful flow on the page. And so today I want to share with you a bunch of secrets for drawing more fluid flourishes. We're going to be using simple geometric shapes to build these frameworks for flourishes. We'll go through 6 different kinds of flourishes together, so by the end you'll have 6 new tools in your tool belt to help you draw more fluid flourishes. I'm Liz Kohler Brown. I'm a surface designer and hand letterer who loves sharing her process with other artists and designers around the world. You might want to pull out your iPad and design some flourishes along with me so that you can have a whole practice page of these fun little sketches that you can use to practice and then share with me on social media so I can see what you made. So let's dive in. So let's start with one of the easiest kinds of flourishes that you can do on any kind of composition, and that is the figure 8. So you can literally just start by making an 8, and you might want to just take a few turns to really round it out. And this is another tip for people who want to draw better flourishes, is take a few rounds. Don't let the first loop be your final loop. Go over it a few times. Then we can reduce the opacity of that and create a new layer. And that way you can just follow this shape somewhat. It doesn't have to be exactly, but you're kind of getting some cues from that shape. And then you can come through and add something to it, like maybe some leaves, or we'll be doing some other kinds of shapes later. But for this one, why not just fill it in with some simple leaves? I want to note here that I'm using the rough inking worn texture brush from the Everything Bagel brush set. So if you want to use that same brush that I'm using right here, go ahead and grab that Everything Bagel brush set, which is a freebie right below this video. And let's just continue, fill these all up with smooth and fluid leaves, and then we'll do the next one. So I think you can see this has a nice fluid shape that, if you didn't start with that figure 8, you'd maybe be having some trouble keeping it nice and fluid and open. And it also just has a natural flow that the human eye loves, because without seeing it, we have this continuation of the shape, and that builds in that natural fluidity. So that is the first one, figure 8. So I'm going to grab a new color, new layer, and you might do the same thing. This would be a fun thing to share on social media. So if you want to just follow along with me and then share yours and tag me, we can connect there and you can show me what you did with these flourishes. This next one is going to be circles and lines, and you're going to see a pattern in this, which is if you start with geometric shapes, you're going to end up with a more fluid flourish. So now that we've got that circle, I can duplicate it and make sure magnetics is on so it goes straight up the canvas. And let's just put that far apart, compared to how we did with this one. We're going a little bit further apart, and then merge those 2 circles together. And let's just stick that in the middle of the canvas here so it's really easy to get to. So now that we've done that, we can connect this point here, which is the point where this circle ends and it reaches the other one. And one thing you might do is put this line on a new layer, and you may need to move it a little bit. Like, see how it cuts this one here, that cuts off this circle? We don't want that. We want it to land perfectly on the edge of the circle on this side, and same on this side. So that means I need to take this little green bar and tilt it a little. That's why it's nice to have this on its own layer, because this tiny little detail adds so much fluidity to your flourish, just making sure the angle of that is correct. I think that's one of the #1 things that I see that are incorrect with people's flourishes is, you know, maybe it goes like right across here. And from a fluidity perspective, it's slicing a circle. So it just slices right through a circle. So you want to make sure that fluidity mark is going from the edge of the circle to the other. So now we can use this shape as a guide. And of course, you may need a few tries to do that. It's not always going to work perfectly on the first try. And then we've got this pretty S shape that's not quite as tight as the figure 8, and it doesn't like connect this way like the figure 8 does, shoots more out this way. So it's just a different kind of flow, but still a nice flow. So with this one, I'm just gonna do some florals. So I'm gonna do like 3 little marks like that, and then maybe some leaves under it. So I'll continue that pattern throughout this whole vine, and that will be this flourish. So of course these are somewhat similar, but the nice thing about this is that you can space the circles as far as you want. So let's say you had like a really long line of text and you wanted to have one of these little guys under it. You could just do a circle over here and then a circle over here, or even as far as like all the way across a page, and then have a line. And then your fluidity is just a little bit more long and fluid. So you get the idea here, but basically you just want to have those equal circles on either side so that we have this nice fluid line in the middle. So I'm going to continue with our next one, which is slightly more complex, but doable for any level of artist, I think, and that is concentric circles. So we're going to take this circle, and this is a new layer, duplicate it, and then make it smaller and bring it into the bottom middle of the remaining circle and put it towards the bottom of the first circle. So you can do this a little more cleanly if you actually turn on the grid. So I turned on the grid in the canvas settings, edit drawing guide, turn that grid all the way up. Take your first circle and make sure that the blue dots line up here. So we've got 2 and 2, blue dot, hitting that grid. Get your next circle, and you can bring it down all the way. That would be one look, or you could bring it up a little bit, either way. Duplicate it again, the smaller one, and then if you just pull this little blue right here, it brings it straight down. So you can choose to either bring it straight down like that, or you can bring it down and up a little bit. So I think you could do a combination of the two on a single flourish if you wanted to. But basically, we're making ourselves a circular guide that's going to make a really pretty shape. So I'm going to merge all those, make them semi-transparent, and then new layer, I'm going to start drawing some shapes. And of course, you could do this with symmetry, or you could do it on a single side. I'm going to go with vertical symmetry here, and why don't we do something like this? Don't have to use every circle. Like let's say you decide, you know, some of these circles you'll skip, do every other, something like that. And then the final one, maybe we'll do something fun to just like open it up. That. But basically we've started with this guide that uses our natural propensity for loving geometric shapes because that's what's all over nature. We're pulling that into our design so that it has this base of geometry, but then at the end, we hide that geometry and nobody knows it's there, but it's affecting them whether or not they see it. So we can use our geometry, but doesn't necessarily have to be a design that screams geometric. It can be very fluid and still be geometric. So then we can start free-forming a little bit. We've got that base shape. We can start going outside of our circle a little. So why not go here a little bit? Like the circle is the original shape, but it's just the vine, you know, it's the frame, and everything else comes off of it. Basically, as we're doing this, I'm hoping that you're starting to see a pattern, which is that when you're doing flourishes, if you can give them some sort of geometric basis, they're going to look a lot better. They're going to like tap into what humans naturally are seeking, which is that order of nature, that natural beauty that you see in seed pods and leaves and all kinds of places all over nature. So then once you hide that circle, you've got this gorgeous fluid flourish. And let's say you want to open it up and you want to use some text in the middle, and this is just on the two sides. You could get your freehand selection tool, tap the move tool, and open it up as much as you need to fit something in there. I want to note here that one thing you could do with this type of shape is turn it into sellable graphics. I have a whole tutorial on creating sellable clip art sets on your iPad, so if you're loving this, go ahead and check out that other video. So we've done some figure eights, we've done some circles and lines, and we've done some pure circles. Let's go back to canvas, crop and resize, give ourselves some more space. I think we can go ahead and admit here that we're going to need more space. Let's do some vines that are made up of circles and lines. So I think the easiest way to do this is to start with a grid. So I'm going to go to the drawing guide, make sure that drawing guide's on, edit drawing guide, tap on that little blue circle and tap reset so it moves to the middle of your canvas. And then we're going to go to 2D grid. I guess we have to reset after we do 2D grid. And then create a grid that is going to be the thickness of your vine. So like you might look at that existing one there and measure that way. So that looks pretty good to me. That's going to be the size of my vine. So now we get to decide what our shape is going to be. So I'm going to get a new color here. And we can go as dramatic as we want. We could literally do, like, if we're talking about geometric shapes, why not start with a circle? Use the move tool to make sure the circle fits within there. And then erase half of it. And that can be the basis for your vine. So literally just going to duplicate that and flip it. Put it over here, and then let's just duplicate that shape a couple of times. Now, of course, you can make this as long as you want. I'm just going to stop here for time's sake. But then we can start adding fun things to our vine. So of course you could do like flowers and leaves like we've been doing, or you could maybe try a different type of leaf, like this sort of Art Nouveau type leaf that goes like this. Almost has like a feather kind of look to it. So I'm going to do that down my vine. I want to note too that I like to batch things like this, so I feel like once I get that fluidity of this feather shape, I want to just go down the whole vine and do it all at once. I feel like if I'm doing this fluid shape each time I'm creating a new leaf, they end up all looking a little bit different. So that's one reason I like to just batch things. I'm doing all the leaves at once. I'm doing all the curves at once, rather than trying to go in and like leaf curve, leaf curve. For me, that ends up being a result of just messy looking art. We could even add some flowers in here, so why not go into each of these little nooks and add some flowers. I'm also just going to go through and make this vine more fun by adding in a different type of leaf. This will just kind of break it up a little bit. So this is kind of another principle, I think, of drawing better flourishes, which is, you know, these are nice where we're using like one shape over and over. But as you add additional shapes, it just becomes more and more interesting and almost starts to get a sort of Baroque feel. So go ahead and add more and more shapes and just see, you know, what if I added some berries? Like, would that be a problem? You can always put it on a new layer and remove it if it's too much. But I think you can imagine that the more of these you add, the more fun it becomes because you're just creating this little menagerie. Of course, you could do the same thing with a wreath shape or something like that. But I think you can see how nice and fluid this became because we started basically with a circle. Next, I want to show you two shapes that can be helpful for creating some really interesting flourishes, and that is the ram's horn and the golden ratio spiral. There's actually a lot of interesting reading about the golden ratio spiral, so if you want to check that out, you might be interested in why this is such an important shape. But I give away these templates in my Art Nouveau class, so if you want to just pop into that class and watch it right now, you can actually do that with a free trial to my membership. You can watch any class you want. Do whatever you want. You get a week in the membership for free. So you could go get this right now if you wanted to. I'm going to put a link to that class right below. But basically, there are these really important mathematical points where you can put your parts of your spiral to make a really pleasing shape. So I'm going to do that with this. And of course, if you want to repeat the same process, just pop into that class using the free trial to my membership. But I think you can see there's something very pleasing about this spiral, and that is because it's based on mathematical principles and shapes that are in nature. So this is one, and you can of course duplicate this down a page and just repeat it over and over. So this is a shape that you can use over and over, just like this, and connect the pieces. And then, of course, we can add some things to it. So I'm going to take a minute and add some berries and leaves to this. So of course at this point you may want to just take some time to add in some color. You could do some inking on a new layer and consider this your sketch layer to create this beautiful flowing vine that could be part of something like a pattern or an illustration or hand lettering. It's question time! Now is the part of the video where I answer a question from the comments that you all have asked me. And this one pertains to flourishes because I use a lot of flourishes on my greeting cards. This question is from Barbara429, and Barbara says, hello, do you have a video on how you photograph your cards? So I'm guessing that Barbara has seen my Etsy shop where I sell my cards like this that have little flourishes all over them. And I take pictures for my Etsy shop to list them there both to sell and to attract art licensors. So the way that I photograph all of my cards, the way that I've always done it, is to use natural light. I think that unnatural light is the enemy of good photography for people who don't know much about photography, including me. I know enough to know that light is super important, and if you can get some beautiful natural light from the side that isn't pure sunlight but is more like diffused light or shade, I would say what I've heard from photographers, one of the best places that you can go to photograph is your garage. Open up a garage door or any door that's like right outside a sunny area but still in the shade. That way you've got that beautiful shade from the inside of the garage mixed with the beautiful bold light from the outside of the garage that creates that beautiful flow. I also recommend that you pair your cards with something. So even something like a pencil that has the size reference that a lot of people understand. You know, they know the size of a pencil, so that makes this make sense. So I put stuff like that in my photos, both to give it a fun vibe and also to show people what the size of the object is. I also want to mention that I have a class showing my whole process for designing and selling greeting cards, including details on how I photograph and an example. So if you want to dive into that right now, you can watch it for free inside my membership using a free trial. You can get a whole week to my membership and access classes like this one and watch as much as you want. Take the week off, call your boss. You know, I'm really sick, I can't work, I've got a studio trial this week. So go ahead and grab that trial. Check out the class and you can see exactly how I photograph my cards in real time. So let's go ahead and put this one up with our existing flourishes. And let's do a couple more here with these spiral shapes because this spiral shape is so powerful. And again, if you want to get this exact template with all the mathematical points on it, you can get that in the class. So I'm going to create a new layer here and get a different color. One fun thing you can do with these spirals is sort of nestle them into each other. So this is going to be my first spiral and I'm on a new layer. This is my first spiral. Now we can add an additional spiral once you get that groove to go into the center. So of course it takes a few times to get that flow right. Like the very first time I draw a flourish like that, I don't get the flow right. So that's another tip for you all, is draw those shapes over and over. And can you see how my second swirl is tapping right here to touch on that original one? Another thing you could do would be to let this part of the swirl tap down here. So if you wanted to create two kind of touch points, you could do that. So basically we're trying to create this interesting relationship between swirls. This is obviously kind of the advanced version, so feel comfortable with the first ones we did before you move into these like combining multiple swirls or combining multiple vines. But basically you can create these really cool relationships between multiple pieces. So we could either do a plant form or we could do like scroll work, which you find on all kinds of kind of Baroque style compositions that have this sort of like flowing feel to them. Something like that if you like that feel, or of course you could do some plants, but whatever you're in the mood for, fill those swirls up with something to create these really fluid shapes. I like to do these sort of Baroque style, I guess you could almost call them waves, but go around the whole piece first and then come back through and add some other additional small ones. So you're getting a lot of fluidity here. Small, big, maybe even looping some other ones around the back like that. Just creates this nice fluid tension. And if you like this style, I would recommend just go look at Baroque style. Go look at like wallpaper and metalwork and ironwork all done in the Baroque style, because you can find some gorgeous inspiration around that theme. I definitely would take some time here to play with these and get some really solid curves going and look at a lot of Baroque inspiration, but I think you guys get the point. This is called the ram's horn. So I would absolutely love to see what you all do with this style and this way of making flourishes. So what I recommend here is just put these all on a dock and crop it to be about the size of your phone, so that it all fits on one canvas, and then share it with me and tag me so I can see what you did. This is a cool little sketch page that you can share and say, hey Liz, I made one of these. So I will see you there. So I hope you had fun drawing some flourishes with me. I think that you can see that I love drawing flourishes. I kind of have a thing for math and geometry and combining that with pattern and nature. So if you're into this, create that practice page and share it with me so I can see what you made. And don't forget to dive into that Art Nouveau class, which you can watch with a free trial to the studio if you want to dive deeper into this particular style. So I will see you all in the next iPad art break, which will be coming out in a couple of weeks. Remember that if you press subscribe right below this video, you'll get a notification whenever a new iPad art break comes out. That way you don't miss one. And if you want to sign up for my mailing list, it'll come straight to your inbox, so you never have to wonder when one is coming next. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hey, before you leave, I want to mention that if you liked this video, you might also like the Design Sellable Clip Art tutorial and the Vine and Stamp Brushes tutorial, which pair really nicely with this Flourishes process that you just learned.